Cashier Comforts Crying Grandma didn't expect she's wife of powerful. Welcome to today's enthralling tale, where one heartfelt act of kindness sets off a cascade of shocking revelations. In this story, we follow a humble cashier who stumbles upon a tearful grandmother in the aisles of a bustling grocery store. When the cashier extends a helping hand, no one, least of all the manager and the other patrons, expects this kind-hearted gesture to trigger a dramatic series of twists and turns. What begins as a simple comfort soon unfolds into a complex web of hidden motives, startling secrets, and the profound power of compassion. Get ready for an unforgettable journey, full of suspense, extraordinary surprises, and life-changing consequences that will keep you glued to your screen. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Marisol Sanchez had always wanted to work in a place where she could meet new people and brighten their day. She was a gentle soul with a penchant for seeing the good in every person who crossed her path. When she was hired as a cashier at Harper's Grocery and Goods, she didn't expect her life would transform into a roller coaster of intrigue. Yet, even on her very first day, a curious tension hung in the air. It wasn't unusual for a new employee to feel a few butterflies, but something about her manager's half-hidden glares made her uneasy. Mr. Baxter, the manager, was known for his strict policies and quick temper. Still, Marisol was determined to stay professional and do her best. She soon discovered that the store's staff had its fair share of internal drama. Tamika, a fellow cashier, whispered to her about the rumors swirling around Mr. Baxter that he had an understanding with certain suppliers, allowing expired items to remain on the shelves longer than permitted. Some insisted it was all talk, but others claimed they had seen him holding hush-hush conversations in the corner of the loading dock. On that first day, a thunderstorm raged outside. Customers trickled in wearing drenched raincoats, their umbrellas battered by the sudden downpour. The wind howled through the small gap beneath the sliding doors, sending shivers down the backs of employees and customers alike. Lightning flashed sporadically, illuminating the store's interior in momentary bursts of harsh white light. Despite the gloom, Marisol tried to keep her spirits high, smiling at everyone and striking up small talk when she could. She noticed an elderly woman hobbling down aisle 2, stopping periodically to clutch the shelves as though she might collapse. Concerned, Marisol rushed over, ignoring the scowl Mr. Baxter shot her way. Up close, the grandmother seemed even more frail. Her face was etched with sorrow, tear tracks stained her cheeks. Gently, Marisol asked if she needed help. In a shaky voice, the woman said her name was Helen Donnelly, and she just felt a bit light-headed. She clutched a small shopping list in one trembling hand, trying to read it through misted over bifocals. Marisol offered her arm for support, leading the grandmother to a nearby bench by the bakery. A wave of concern and compassion coursed through Marisol's heart. She had no idea that this one act of kindness would soon unravel secrets she couldn't have fathomed. While Marisol fetched a paper cup of water from the store's cooler, Mr. Baxter stomped up behind her, his voice low and threatening. "We're not running a charity here," he hissed. "Customers can get their own items. Don't waste time." The cruelty in his words made Marisol's face burn with indignation, but she chose to remain calm. She kept her attention on Helen, who was shivering slightly, despite the warmth of the store's interior. "Thank you, dear," Helen said softly, pressing the cup of water to her lips. "You're very sweet to help an old woman like me." Before Marisol could respond, Helen's voice cracked, and she let out a shaky sob. Sorrow seemed to emanate from her frail body, and Marisol felt an acute pang of empathy. She had a strong feeling something was very wrong. Mr. Baxter, still lingering close, rolled his eyes. He turned toward Tamika and muttered loud enough for both to hear, "Some people just love the attention." Marisol shot him a disapproving glance, but tried to maintain her professionalism. She noticed that Helen was wearing a simple gold band on her left hand, glimmering faintly in the overhead fluorescent lights. It didn't look particularly expensive or ornate, but the woman constantly fiddled with it, as though it held deep significance. "Would you like me to help you finish shopping?" Marisol offered. It was a spontaneous offer. She was risking further wrath from Mr. Baxter, yet Helen's desperation tugged at her. In that moment, Helen's eyes flickered with something akin to gratitude and also apprehension, as if she was terrified of imposing on this young cashier. Then, out of nowhere, the store's PA system crackled. A tense announcement erupted. "Attention employees, we have a code silver in aisle 4. Repeat, code silver in aisle 4. Immediately, Tamika grabbed Marisol's wrist, a mixture of alarm and confusion written on her face. None of them could recall the manager ever using such a code before. "What does that mean?" Tamika asked, her voice unsteady. Marisol's heart thumped. She glanced at Helen, who was struggling to stand. "I'm not sure. Let me help you back to your cart," Marisol said, trying to sound steady. But on the inside, her mind whirled with possibilities. Was it a medical emergency or some kind of theft in progress? Or was Mr. Baxter orchestrating some bizarre tactic to get rid of Helen? The sense of dread only deepened when she caught the manager's sly grin as he hurried toward aisle 4. Something was definitely amiss, and Marisol suspected that Helen was at the center of it all, though she couldn't yet guess why. Marisol stayed by Helen's side, uncertain whether to follow Mr. Baxter's summons. But when they heard a sudden scream from the direction of aisle 4, it spurred them into action. Marisol gently guided Helen along, determined to keep her safe. The scene that met them was odd. A young man stood with a box of cereal in hand, looking utterly perplexed. He was pinned against a display of laundry detergents by Mr. Baxter, who was shouting accusations of shoplifting. The man frantically insisted he had his receipt, but Mr. Baxter refused to listen. Helen gasped. "Oh dear," she murmured, placing a trembling hand over her heart. Despite her fragile appearance, she seemed outraged at the injustice. Marisol quickly realized that this had nothing to do with any code silver. It was an excuse for Mr. Baxter to publicly humiliate someone he believed to be stealing. The manager took out his phone and threatened to call the police. Panic filled the young man's eyes. With each passing second, the tension mounted. A small crowd formed to watch, whispering among themselves. As Marisol tried to persuade Mr. Baxter to let the man explain, she noticed Helen's eyes darting around anxiously. Something about the entire situation was making her older companion quake. Then Marisol spotted something strange, a well-dressed gentleman in a crisp grey suit lurking at the far end of the aisle, his phone raised, as if recording. He was intently focused on Helen, though he pretended otherwise. The moment Helen looked in his direction, the man slipped behind a towering pyramid of toilet paper packs, disappearing from sight. Marisol's unease deepened. Who was that man, and why did Helen look so terrified all of a sudden? Pushing aside her own confusion, Marisol confronted Mr. Baxter. "At least listen to the guy. He's showing you the receipt," she pleaded. That was when Mr. Baxter spun around, face red with fury. "If you don't stop meddling, you'll be the one needing a new job," he thundered. For an instant, it seemed he might strike her, but he restrained himself. Around them, customers collectively gasped. Suddenly, Helen's voice rang out with surprising authority. "That's enough." Everyone froze, including Mr. Baxter, who looked stunned by the sternness in her tone. "If you're a manager, you should act like one," Helen declared, though her breath was still shaky from tears. The manager flinched, apparently unsure whether to retaliate. This was a side of Helen that Marisol had not seen beneath her grandmotherly facade. There was a steely resolve that could halt even the angriest of men in their tracks. After the chaos settled, Mr. Baxter stomped off, muttering under his breath about how these customers are all the same. Marisol breathed a sigh of relief when the young man with the cereal showed he had indeed paid for his groceries. The crowd dispersed, leaving Marisol and Helen momentarily alone in the aisle. Helen's sharp command still echoed in Marisol's mind. Where had that come from? "Thank you for standing up for him," Marisol said gently, pushing the cart to a quieter area near the store's produce section. Helen offered a weary smile, but her eyes were clouded with lingering worry. "I can't abide bullying," she replied, casting a glance in the direction where the suited man had disappeared. Especially from someone who thinks they're above the law. Marisol wanted to inquire about the man in the grey suit, but she hesitated. Something told her Helen might clam up if she pushed too hard. So she offered to help pick out fresh fruits and vegetables. Helen revealed she was planning a small family dinner, though her smile dimmed at the mention of family. With a tremor in her voice, she admitted she wasn't sure if it would happen anymore. "Things have changed recently," she said cryptically. A moment later, Tamika hurried over, discreetly passing Marisol a note. It read, "The manager is plotting something with the supply guys, be careful." As soon as Marisol looked up from the note, Tamika vanished into a throng of customers, leaving Marisol even more on edge. Was there some illicit deal going on right now? And how could it possibly connect to this kind old woman? Helen tugged on Marisol's sleeve. "My dear, would you mind finding me a jar of honey? I have to keep my blood sugar up, and a bit of honey in my tea helps." Marisol, concerned for Helen's health, nodded eagerly. On her way to the honey aisle, she spotted the man in the grey suit again, lurking near the shelves of organic produce, still monitoring Helen's every move. A jolt of protectiveness surged in Marisol. She had no idea who he was or why he was stalking Helen, but she knew it couldn't be good. Determined to figure out what was going on, Marisol carefully selected a jar of real Manuka honey, a well-known New Zealand honey lauded for its health benefits for Helen, using a real brand name to show she took quality seriously. Her mind raced with questions, each one more unsettling than the last. Little did she know, the events unfolding around her were about to take a far darker turn. Returning with the honey, Marisol found Helen leaning heavily on the shopping cart, her cheeks pale. The older woman's condition looked worse by the minute. Marisol helped her to a nearby seat set aside for older customers. As she rummaged in her purse, Helen realized with alarm that her wallet was missing. "I don't understand," she whispered, tears forming once again. "I had it when I came in." Immediately, Marisol offered to help her look for it. Was it stolen? Misplaced? The possibility that Mr. Baxter might have orchestrated something nefarious flitted through her mind, though she had no solid evidence. While searching through various aisles, Marisol kept a wary eye out for the mysterious man in the grey suit. She finally spotted him near the entrance, talking rapidly into his phone and shooting furtive glances in Helen's direction. Sensing she was being watched, he abruptly turned and hurried out of the store, nearly colliding with a display of soda bottles on his way. Marisol debated whether to chase after him, but decided her priority was ensuring Helen's safety. After combing the store for signs of the missing wallet, Marisol asked a few co-workers if they'd noticed anything. Tamika's eyes flashed with concern. "I saw that man in the suit hovering around her earlier," she said in a hushed tone. "He looked shifty, but I didn't see him do anything suspicious, just watching." Upon returning to Helen, Marisol discovered that the grandmother's anxious tears had resumed. "I needed that wallet. There's something very important in there," she whispered. "Not just money, but a piece of my heart." Marisol wondered if it was a keepsake photo. She gently reassured Helen that they would find it. but in the back of her mind, she feared the situation was escalating beyond simple theft. Just then, Mr. Baxter reappeared, barking at Marisol for leaving her cashier station. When Marisol explained Helen had lost her wallet, he wore a patronizing sneer. "Well, if she can't pay, maybe she shouldn't shop," he retorted. The cruelty of his words made Helen's shoulders quake, though she tried to hold herself upright. The manager was obviously enjoying his power trip, but there was more behind that twisted smile. Something malicious lurked beneath it. Sensing a confrontation brewing, Tamika intervened. "Let's just ask store security to run the tapes from the surveillance cameras," she suggested. Mr. Baxter's face turned ashen, and for a moment he looked genuinely alarmed. He stammered something about technical issues, then stormed off, proclaiming that the cameras had been malfunctioning all week. Suspicion clung to him like a thick fog, and Marisol couldn't help but think he was lying. If the manager wanted to hide whatever had been caught on tape, then there had to be more to Helen's predicament than met the eye. Despite the rising tension, customers were still milling about, unaware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes. Marisol guided Helen to the customer service desk, hoping to contact someone who might help. Helen, fraught with worry, grew increasingly anxious. "I can't call my family," she admitted, eyes downcast. "I don't want them involved in this. It's too dangerous." Marisol's confusion only deepened. What kind of trouble was Helen mixed up in, and why would she fear involving loved ones? While waiting for a response from the half-distracted customer service rep, Helen's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at the screen, and her face drained of color. Before Marisol could see the message, Helen hastily tucked her phone away. Marisol could sense the older woman's pulse racing. This was no ordinary lost wallet situation. Something bigger loomed. Then, an unexpected development. A uniformed police officer strode in. Officer Clark, a familiar face in the neighborhood. He was often stationed around the area, ensuring the safety of local businesses. Mr. Baxter practically raced to greet him, pointing an accusing finger at Helen. "Officer, that woman is causing a disturbance and claiming she lost her wallet," he said in a tone dripping with feigned concern. "I just want to make sure everything is handled properly." A wave of dread surged through Marisol. She noticed that Helen was trembling so violently she could hardly speak. The officer scanned the scene, his gaze falling upon Helen's tear-streaked face. "Ma'am, do you need any assistance?" he asked gently. But before Helen could answer, Mr. Baxter pounced on the conversation again, launching into a tirade that depicted Helen as some cunning trickster. The entire scenario felt surreal, especially since the real troublemaker seemed to be Mr. Baxter himself. Marisol found the courage to speak up. "Officer, she's the victim here. Someone stole her wallet. We just need a little help finding it or checking the cameras." Officer Clark's eyes flickered with sympathy, but Mr. Baxter quickly insisted the surveillance cameras were down, repeating his excuse. Clark remained skeptical. "If there's been a theft, I'll need to file a report," he said. He pulled out a small notepad. "Ma'am, what's your full name?" Helen hesitated, looking cornered. But as she was about to speak, her phone buzzed once more. She glanced down at it, swallowed hard, and then whispered, "My name is Helen Donnelly." The officer's eyebrows arched slightly, as if the name struck a chord of familiarity. He didn't push further. Instead, he jotted down notes. Marisol sensed a surge of panic from Mr. Baxter, whose posture stiffened. Why would he be afraid of the name Helen Donnelly? Helen's eyes darted to the entrance, where the man in the grey suit had reappeared this time with another figure who stood half-hidden in the shadows. Marisol's stomach flipped. In that fleeting moment, she had an overwhelming sense that Helen's presence in this store was no accident, and that more people were involved in a labyrinthine plot than anyone dared to admit. Officer Clark, a man with a keen eye for detail, seemed to notice the man in the grey suit as well. He excused himself momentarily, moving in their direction. Meanwhile, Mr. Baxter started pacing, shooting worried glances at the front door. Marisol tried to calm Helen, who clutched the jar of Manuka honey as if it were a lifeline. "Dear," Helen whispered, "I'm so sorry you got dragged into this." Marisol patted her hand gently. "It's not your fault," she assured Helen, her voice tinged with equal measures of concern and determination. A wave of empathy coursed through her. Helen was alone in this battle, frightened and potentially being followed by some unknown threat. Marisol resolved to stick by her side, even if it cost her job security at Harper's Grocery and Goods. Then, in a dramatic twist, the door swung open again, this time admitting a regal-looking man in an impeccably tailored suit, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His face carried an air of authority so profound that every person in the store paused to stare. Mr. Baxter practically choked when he recognized him. "Oh no," he muttered under his breath. "Senator Donnelly?" Indeed, it was Senator Richard Donnelly, a figure whose face had graced many campaign posters and TV interviews. But the store's patrons could scarcely believe he was standing there in flesh and blood. His gaze swept across the store until it landed on Helen. Without hesitation, he strode toward her. She rose unsteadily to her feet, the tears in her eyes transforming into a look of mingled relief and lingering fear. Marisol's jaw nearly dropped. Helen Donnelly was the senator's wife? She glanced at Mr. Baxter, who looked as if he wished the floor would swallow him. Suddenly, the man in the grey suit emerged from behind a display, evidently part of the senator's retinue, though he also appeared to harbour a private agenda. The entire store watched, transfixed by this high-stakes reunion. Senator Donnelly enveloped Helen in a protective embrace. "Why didn't you call me sooner?" he asked in a low, urgent tone, leading her gently to a quieter corner near the deli counter. She lowered her eyes, avoiding the many stares from onlookers. "I thought I could handle it," she murmured, her voice cracking. "But they took my wallet, and—" Her words trailed off as tears overcame her. Marisol watched them with a mixture of awe and concern. She recalled Mr. Baxter's cruel attitude, the suspicious code silver, and the looming presence of the grey-suited figure. Something told her that even the senator's arrival wouldn't instantly dispel the tangled web of secrets swirling inside these supermarket walls. Yet a new wave of hope flickered. Perhaps the senator, with his power and influence, could ensure justice was served. But as she glanced at the tight-lipped bodyguards, she realized that the drama was far from over. The tension in the store crackled like static electricity as Senator Donnelly conferred in hushed tones with his security detail. Meanwhile, Officer Clark quietly took in the scene, showing respect for the senator's space but remaining ready to act if needed. Mr. Baxter, visibly sweating, was pacing near the frozen food section as though searching for an escape route. Marisol couldn't help but piece together the puzzle in her mind. Why would Mr. Baxter orchestrate a confrontation over a stolen wallet, especially once he recognized Helen was married to Senator Donnelly? A trickle of insight finally slid into place. Perhaps Mr. Baxter hadn't known Helen's identity at first, but after hearing the name Helen Donnelly, he panicked. He was likely terrified that any scandal in his store could provoke an investigation into his shady dealings, especially with a senator's wife involved. And what about the man in the grey suit? Part of the senator's detail, yes, but his behavior felt more like a spy than a mere bodyguard. The senator's voice rose, straining with urgency. "Helen, please tell me the truth. Why are you here alone? You know how dangerous it is right now." She closed her eyes, collecting herself. "I wanted to feel normal again, Richard. I've been living in fear ever since." She stopped abruptly. Her gaze darted toward the store windows, half expecting some lurking threat. "But I think they followed me here." Marisol overheard enough to realize Helen's family dinner was never just about groceries. She'd been trying to regain a sense of normalcy, to break free from an oppressive situation. The senator caught sight of Marisol hovering nearby and offered a grateful nod. "Thank you for helping my wife. I won't forget this." A swirl of conflicting emotions flashed across his face: relief, worry, and an undercurrent of anger, directed at whomever had caused Helen distress. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shattered the tension. Mr. Baxter had attempted to slip out the emergency exit, triggering the klaxon. Everyone whipped around, their eyes drawn to the red flashing lights near the stockroom. The manager froze, his hand still on the door's crash bar. The senator's bodyguards sprang into motion, bounding across the store in swift strides. Mr. Baxter looked like a trapped animal, fear etched on his features. Off in the corner, the man in the grey suit seemed to be making a calculated decision. He lingered for a moment, then quickly headed for the exit, but Officer Clark intercepted him. "Going somewhere?" the officer asked pointedly. The man hesitated, forced a fake grin, and claimed he was just trying to avoid the chaos. As Clark questioned him further, Mr. Baxter made a desperate break, dashing down the back hallway. The store erupted into commotion as customers instinctively backed away, uncertain whether danger lurked around the corner. Marisol rushed to Helen's side, ensuring she was protected. The senator turned to his wife, face grim. "Stay with my security," he ordered. "I'm going to find out what's really going on here." A hush fell as the senator, Officer Clark, and two bodyguards disappeared after Mr. Baxter. Though the store was now filled with anxious whispers, Marisol sensed that the real confrontation was taking place in that back corridor and that it could change everything for better or worse. For several agonizing minutes, no one knew exactly what was happening. Helen stood in the produce aisle, quietly weeping with relief now that her husband had arrived, but also trembling with residual terror. Marisol clasped her hands, scanning the store for any hidden threats. Tamika approached, eyes wide. "Marisol, you won't believe this," she whispered urgently, gesturing for her to come closer. "I just overheard one of the bodyguards on his radio. Apparently, Mr. Baxter's been suspected of laundering dirty money through the store's inventory system. And that man in the grey suit? He's an investigator working for the senator, gathering evidence." Marisol's head reeled. So the shady business with expired goods might be just the tip of the iceberg. A wave of sickening fear rose in her gut as she realized Helen's stolen wallet was likely part of a broader scheme. Did Mr. Baxter orchestrate its theft, hoping to bait Helen or punish her for wandering into his nest of corruption? If so, he had no idea he was dealing with the senator's wife, and that miscalculation might seal his fate. Just then, the store's fluorescent lights flickered ominously, followed by a muffled crash from the back corridor. The hair stood up on Marisol's arms. She exchanged tense glances with Tamika, both uncertain whether to intervene or stay put. Another loud bang echoed through the store. Panic rose among the customers, many of whom hurried to exit, but the senator's security staff blocked the doors, explaining that they needed to contain the situation. At last, the corridor door burst open and Officer Clark emerged, escorting Mr. Baxter in handcuffs. The manager's face was ashen, beads of sweat rolling down his temples. The senator followed closely behind, holding a small battered wallet, Helen's wallet. At the sight of her missing item, Helen let out a soft cry. The look in Senator Donnelly's eyes spoke volumes. He marched up to his wife, gently placing the wallet in her hands. He was planning to use whatever personal information he could find, the senator said, his voice shaking with outrage. And apparently there's a lot more. We found suspicious documents in his office, proof of illegal deals and targeted harassment. A rush of relief and gratitude surged through Marisol, but her heart still hammered from the chaos. Mr. Baxter glared at her with unbridled hatred as he was led past. "This is all your fault," he spat. "If you hadn't meddled, Officer Clark tightened his grip on Mr. Baxter's arm, cutting him off. The manager's eyes were wild, unrepentant, and full of venom. Helen's hands trembled as she opened her wallet. Inside was a photograph, a snapshot of her grandson, whose bright smile seemed frozen in a happier time. Tears dripped onto the plastic cover. Then she revealed another item to Marisol, a folded letter with a threatening message, scrawled in bold, ominous letters. "I've been getting these for weeks," she confessed to Marisol. "I didn't want Richard to worry, but it looks like it's all connected. Someone was using Mr. Baxter and this store as part of a broader scheme to intimidate me." Marisol marveled at the cunning behind this plan. Whoever orchestrated it clearly underestimated the power of empathy and the might of a determined senator. As onlookers stared at the spectacle of Mr. Baxter's arrest, the senator turned to the crowd, stating firmly that justice would be served. A murmur of approval swept through the store. For a moment, it felt like the entire place collectively exhaled a breath they didn't realize they'd been holding. The aftermath was both cathartic and unsettling. Now that Mr. Baxter's scheme was exposed, the store would inevitably undergo a complete overhaul. Senator Donnelly promised full cooperation with the authorities and an immediate investigation into any employees who might have colluded with the corrupt manager. Tamika stood at Marisol's side, disbelief and relief shining in her eyes. Helen, still shaken, managed a tearful smile. "My dear," she said, taking Marisol's hand in both of hers, "you've been nothing short of an angel today. If you hadn't come to my aid, who knows what might have happened?" Her voice quivered with gratitude. Marisol's cheeks warmed. She realized just how serendipitously she had crossed paths with Helen, how a simple act of kindness in a grocery aisle became the catalyst for unearthing a criminal ring. Senator Donnelly addressed Marisol directly. "I owe you a debt of gratitude for helping my wife. We arrived at exactly the right time, but it was your willingness to stand up for her that made all the difference." Despite the gravity of the situation, a wave of quiet pride washed over Marisol. She had acted on her convictions, even under threat of losing her job. As the store gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, Officer Clark and the senator began coordinating statements from customers and staff who'd witnessed Mr. Baxter's outbursts. The man in the grey suit stepped forward, introducing himself as James Caldwell, a private investigator hired by the senator to trail Helen discreetly after suspicious threats were discovered. It turned out Caldwell wasn't so shadowy after all. He just had a clandestine assignment to ensure Helen's safety and gather evidence on those threatening her. He apologized for making Helen uncomfortable, admitting he had to keep his distance so as not to tip off potential perpetrators. Word traveled fast. Soon, local news crews arrived, crowding the storefront. Camera flashes reflected off the grocery carts, and reporters jostled for position, eager to capture images of the newly arrested manager. Marisol felt a knot of anxiety twist in her stomach as a journalist tried to shove a microphone in her face. Helen noticed her discomfort and stepped in, politely but firmly redirecting the reporters. In the following hours, Senator Donnelly helped his wife out to their car, offering to personally drive her home. Before leaving, he turned to Marisol once more. "I'm sorry you've had to deal with this. If you find yourself in need of work or a reference, please contact my office. I'll make sure you're taken care of." Though Marisol initially felt embarrassed by his grand gesture, she saw genuine sincerity in his eyes. Helen embraced Marisol one last time. "Thank you, dear, for giving me the courage to stand up for what's right." Then, with the swirl of reporters at their heels, the senator and Helen disappeared into the rainy afternoon. The wind had calmed to a gentle drizzle, as though the storm had spent itself in the dramatic confrontation within the store. In the days that followed, new management took over Harper's Grocery and Goods, vowing a clean house approach to restore integrity. Mr. Baxter faced multiple charges, not just for harassing Helen and orchestrating the wallet theft, but also for financial crimes tied to the store's inventory system. While employees reeled from the shocking scandal, many quietly rejoiced that justice was done. Marisol, deeply moved by the entire ordeal, continued working at the store, though an official job offer soon arrived from Senator Donnelly's office, should she ever wish to accept it. She was hailed as a local hero among her peers. Even Tamika, who once teased her for being too caring, apologized and praised Marisol for her brave stance. The karmic retribution was complete, a cruel manager undone by his own greed, an intimidated grandmother finding safety and vindication, and the humble cashier who followed her heart only to end up at the center of a story far greater than herself. No one who witnessed it would soon forget the day a compassionate act revealed a powerful senator's family secret, toppling a corrupt empire hidden in plain sight. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey that proves small acts of kindness can spark life-changing outcomes. By simply comforting a woman in distress, our courageous cashier exposed corruption, confronted hidden dangers, and ensured justice for a powerful senator's family. This tale is a powerful reminder that empathy, honesty, and compassion can unravel even the tightest web of wrongdoing. As Helen's and Marisol's experiences show, doing the right thing can echo far beyond our own lives, touching those we never expected to reach. If you've enjoyed this dramatic story and its triumphant finale, be sure to like this video, share it with friends who love suspenseful tales, and subscribe for more captivating content. Your support makes all the difference.